Frances, leader, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me again. It's wonderful.
Yes, Frances, I was just telling you a moment ago, I stumbled across your research into the Black Nobility. Why do you find the Black Nobility so interesting? What got you into that topic?
In the late 1980s, I was working as a PA at board level of a very important insurance organisation in the City of London. And because I was working at that level, I spent a lot of time with people who were at the top of industry in the City of London. And I'll have to be honest with you, I didn't like them at all. These people were horrible, and it was very difficult to work for them and maintain the facade of being entertained and amused by them and their jokes. But you know the sort of thing that you hear about Eton boys burning £50 notes in front of homeless people? These are those kind of people. And they do have the most appalling self-esteem. And they are, it's not critical of the rest of the planet. It's, they are snobbish beyond snobbery. It's horrific. And they're sadistic as well in their humour. And when you spend that much time, you know, a whole working day, every day for months and months, with people like that, you want to know just how powerful these people are. And by keeping quiet and taking notes, because I do shorthand and typing, obviously I was at that level of I would write everything down. Even when they were talking and they weren't in a meeting, this was just ordinary conversation, I would write everything down. And then when I had any spare time, I would research in the archives of the business that I was working in. And I got to, because I had so much spare time, that level of work is not particularly demanding. You've just got to look pretty, answer the phone, do a bit of typing, and honestly, you could get it all done in a couple of hours. There's nothing to do really. So I used to spend the rest of my day researching in the archives, finding out who was who, what they did, what their investments were elsewhere. And as soon as I moved on from that, when I was fortunate enough to get a different job somewhere that was a little bit more interesting and a little bit less taxing on my brain, because that was very difficult to deal with people like that without snapping at them for their behaviour and the way that they talked about ordinary people. It was offensive. So I was glad to get out of there, and as soon as I did, I continued my research. It wasn't exactly difficult. I was able to find books and information written, but obviously written years ago, and discovered that they liked to call themselves, well, the majority of them like to call themselves the Black Nobility, or just the nobility. In the case of our royal family, it's the firm. They don't even bother with
the firm.
The firm, yeah. So this sense of superiority that they had was so offensive to me that that's what kept my nose to the grindstone, learning more and more about them. Because the thing that puzzled me the most was, where is this income coming from? They've got billions, not well, it goes into trillions in some cases. And where is this income coming from? And after many years of hunting, I was able to figure out that it was mainly sex, drugs, and slavery. That was the root source of their vast fortunes. So nothing that they ever did was of any benefit to anybody except themselves. And I thought, this needs exposing. And that's where we're at now, exposing it.
Okay, but I mean, in all honesty, when we talk about the Black Nobility, we aren't just talking about wealthy people. We're talking about a level that's beyond that.
Yeah. They've been going for thousands of years. It's not a recent thing, and they call them the fondi, these foundation stones of wealth. They're called the fondi, and each family has a fondi of wealth that each generation is supposed to increase. And I've traced back to the Roman Empire, but I dare say it goes back way before that too. But from the Roman Empire onwards, I was able to identify individual families that escaped when the Visigoths destroyed Rome and went to the swamps in the north of Italy, eventually teaming up with the descendants of the Phoenicians, who were like pirates in all of the Mediterranean, and with them were able to create a very small empire in the Mediterranean, where they were running slaves in one direction and drugs in another direction. And so it was all maritime. The whole thing was maritime trading. They were taking slaves out of Europe into the Middle East and selling them at a good price. And they were taking drugs from the Far East and bringing them back into Europe. There was a lot of trade in beautiful fabrics from China and India. But basically, any commodity that was traded on the Mediterranean was under their control.
When we talk about the Black Nobility, we're talking about a small selection of families that have bloodlines that go back thousands of years to the Roman Empire and possibly earlier. And they have been immensely wealthy and also powerful. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, they made sure of that. And the way that they operated was always to infiltrate and befriend any small principalities around them. So they always came across as if they were your friend, but they were also befriending your enemies. And then they would set people off against one another. And in that way, they were always able to make money because they were providing both sides with mercenaries, and any looting that was done of any cities went into their coffers. So they were constantly, literally, swooping on everything that was valuable was going to wind up in their pocket.
The families that exist today can trace their roots back to perhaps some Roman emperors, consuls, senators, and basically high society in the Roman Empire. And they amassed wealth and power through conquest and slavery and all sorts of other exploitation. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly it. And they also controlled religion. They encourage the populations of their colonies to have religions which cause the people to be terrorized. Like, for example, Christianity, they loved Christianity and they were quite happy to have that spread throughout the Roman Empire because it was better than an army. It was teaching people to fear God and reprisal after death. So that was a brilliant system to control the behaviour of the people.
Sorry if I jump in from time to time. I don't mean to break your train of thought, but I just want to make sure that I am following you because it's quite a complicated topic. When you talk about Christianity, you are referring to initially the Catholic Church and then later the Church of England. Is that right?
Both, yeah. All forms of Christianity have come from the original Roman form that started in about the 3rd or 4th century. And nobody could read or write. So what they were being taught was what suited the Romans. And then, of course, when the Bible was translated into English, that caused a lot of worries for them because it became obvious that the Bible didn't exactly say what they had previously said it said. And also it's to be borne in mind that they had, for example, the Ten Commandments, and everybody who was a Christian, and you had to be a Christian in the Roman Empire by then, everyone that was a Christian had to obey these 10 Commandments. But they didn't. The people that were ruling, they didn't obey those rules because they don't believe in God. They're atheists and nihilists. And they laugh at us for believing anything like that at all.
Oh, this is all very interesting history, but why does it matter?
Oh, well, it matters because as long as people remain ignorant of it, they won't understand the mechanism that is holding them down as a slave, that is keeping them poor, that is denying them access to every new development that ever is, because that's what they do. They make sure that we don't know what they know. Knowledge is more wealth than money. It's more valuable by far. And they're preventing us from having the knowledge we need to make everyone's lives better. They are keeping us living short lives, getting very sick. And like, for example, the royal family, they don't get as sick as we do they? Look at them all. The Queen lived to be 96. There are very few people that do that. And it's because they have access to medical systems that are better than what we have access to. And we in the last 5 years, we've seen what our medical system is capable of, and it's upset everyone. No one wants to go to hospital anymore. Everyone keeps well away from the doctors if they can avoid them. So we've learned in the last 5 years something we needed to know 500 years ago, but they've been very successful in keeping us ill-informed.
You said earlier that the early black nobility managed to maintain a type of dominance through maritime trading, like spices and fabrics and drugs. Did they create sort of a central stronghold? I think you mentioned Venice.
Well, yeah, Venice was their stronghold for 1,500 years. They eventually realised that they needed that it was an inconvenient place. It was convenient for the Mediterranean empire, but when they wanted to go global, it was an inconvenient spot. So they moved to Amsterdam and then very quickly moved from Amsterdam to the City of London with William of Orange when he married our Queen. So they were able to get in through the back door, effectively, and that was very satisfying to them because the City of London Square Mile was originally Roman anyway and had special arrangements with the royal family of the UK to maintain its independence. And then on the lines of that independence, they set up Washington DC, and then after that, the last one of the three was the Vatican, which didn't get its independence until 1927, but that's the third of the three independent cities.
This is very important, what you're talking about now. The three independent, so to speak, cities, Washington, City of London, and the Vatican. Because you've made the point that the Roman Empire didn't actually collapse. It just changed form.
Yeah, it just relocated and rebranded. The last thing they ever wanted to be called was the Roman Empire. They realised that the way to be truly powerful was to have no identity, to in fact find scapegoats or human shields to cover for them. So when they took over the City of London and they set up what we call the British Empire. It was never British. It belonged to them. The British were the cogs in the wheel. They were the cannon fodder that went out and got the empire, the lands, America, Canada, Australia, South Africa, and New Zealand. The British were the workers who went and got the empire, but the empire was never British. But calling it British means that the whole world thinks that it was the British Empire that dominated, that caused colonialism on a massive scale worldwide. But it wasn't really. It was the Venetian Empire disguised as the British Empire.
You mentioned scapegoats. That's very, very poignant also because firstly, the Black Nobility are about 12 or 13 families that you can actually name. And the scapegoats, as we see today, are all types of people, one of them being Jews.
Oh, they love using the Jews as scapegoats. They're the perfect example. They in fact invented the very first ghetto when they were in Venice and they had banking houses. They had a bit of a problem because they had no worries about usury, about extreme interest on loans and so forth, but they couldn't be seen to use that kind of banking system because they were pretending to be Christians. So they employed the Jews, but they didn't want them actually living with them in Venice, so they set up the first Jewish ghetto on another island nearby. And then that system was adopted all the way through Europe. Every city had a ghetto, a Jewish quarter or ghetto.
How powerful is or are the Black Nobility?
I don't think there's any word that I could find or think of that would describe the extreme of this powerfulness. It's entire, it's global. It has been for a long time. To think that the New World Order is somewhere in the future is ridiculous. It's been like this for centuries. They they make wars to make money. Everything is about making money for them. So, there's no point in having a military industrial complex if you're not going to go to war. So they find good ones. They set up, let's have a war over here and let's have a war over there. And the objective, most of the time, is to clear out people from lands that they want to exploit in some way, and to put pressure on the lands that are doing really well. So, for example, at the moment, the Middle East is being cleared out for the last God knows how long, 50 odd years. They've been clearing out the Middle East into Europe and now into America. And the object of that exercise is to get access to the minerals and oil deposits in the Middle East, and at the same time use the displaced people to place social pressure on the systems in the European countries, to the point where the people are at each other's throats, because everybody's competing for fewer and fewer jobs and fewer facilities. So it has a double-edged sword. They get to manipulate and use all the wealth that's coming out of the Middle Eastern countries, but at the same time, those people have no choice. They either stay in the Middle East and die, or they migrate. They don't have any choice. And we haven't got any choice. We have to accept them coming in, plus poverty, and unrest, because our cultures will clash, and that's deliberate. It's deliberate.
Yeah. So Francis, so if we were to look at a hierarchical structure of the most powerful people in the world, they're pretty much at the top. Is that right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, there's no one above them. And I know a lot of people think, oh, this is the devil or Satan. They think it's Satan. You've got to be a Christian to believe in Satan, and they're not. They're not Christians. They're atheists and nihilists. They don't believe in any divine retribution. They don't believe in heaven or hell. Those are the stories that they told to the slaves. They just think that you've got one life and then you pop your clogs and that's it. That's why they spend so much money with people like Ray Kurzweil trying to invent a way to upload your brain into a computer and live forever. They're as nuts as ninepence. Honestly, it's ridiculous, Jeremy, how nuts they are. But that's how it is.
Somebody listening to you might think, oh, but this sounds very woo-woo, it's very abstract. These are today real people living in actual countries, right?
Yeah. They're not just living... They're mainly living in fortified castles around the world. They've got super yachts that they can spend some time on. They've got private islands. They own... For example, in the UK, where I live, you only own... If you buy a piece of property, you only own the top 6 inches. Beneath that... I know, it's mad. But beneath that, it's all theirs. It all belongs to the royal family. And the same thing applies... Yeah, and the same thing applies anywhere in any of the colonies. They all belong to the royal family. If you buy a house, you're only buying the house, the property, and 6 inches of soil. Anything below that is theirs. So if you were to dig down a couple of feet and find treasure, that becomes part of the treasury. If you dig down a couple of miles and find oil, that becomes the royal families. That belongs to the country. and who owns the country? The royal family.
That's very interesting, Francis, because it changes the dynamic of politics, doesn't it?
Well, it changes entirely your point of view when it comes to, shall I buy myself a piece of land, because it's just a con. It's a complete con.
Now, you mentioned these. So I've got the names of some of these families. I can't pronounce a lot of these names. They're just, I think they're Italian or something, but I can pronounce like Orsini and Rospoli and Conti. I think the point is that there are actual families with these bloodlines that go back, and they're traceable, and they've held on to these levers of power. How have they done that?
Well, if you think back to the serfdom, they owned huge pieces of land. The only people that were allowed to live on those pieces of land were tenants, and those tenants were paying rent, and they built up their coffers that way as well. There was no way of becoming a landowner unless you did so by hereditary or by good fortune and were able to buy some land if you did really well. But the fact is that even, like I say, even if you were able to buy yourself a piece of land, which I have done from time to time, and then to find out that I only own the top 6 inches was a bit disappointing, to say the least.
It's a bit of a raw deal.
Well, yeah, so I gave up with that idea. I thought, no, I'm not buying any more land. When I came back from Spain, I had a fruit farm in Spain, was the last piece of land I owned. And it's the same there. The royal families in Spain are part of the Black Nobility.
So effectively, you're talking about European aristocracy.
As a whole, yes. Yes.
Okay, so what about Asian, like China and that part of the world? Do they also have black nobility families?
I don't think they have so much black nobility families, but they have been infiltrated with advisors and, for example, in China, the Jesuits were basically early spies, and they were going into China to teach and convert to Christianity, ostensibly. But really they were just spying and getting into influencing the landowners and the aristocracy of China and Japan and other places like that. So they have an influence, and that influence can be really, really important. And via that influence, they can also be quite threatening.
Do they have significant influence over geopolitics?
They are geopolitics. Everything beneath, yeah,
Right.
Everything beneath them is just a layer of servitude, you know.
So in other words, they control the banks.
Yeah. It's all to make them more. Now, the situation in Ukraine is very interesting because their greatest servants at the top of the banking industry are the Jews. But most of the Jews that are now in Israel and in major cities in Europe and America, they're descended from the Khazarians. And the
Eastern Europe.
Yeah. So it looks to me as if they're going to go back, as if the Khazarians are trying to reclaim Khazaria, the land that they had from Kiev all the way across to Kazakhstan, which is a huge stretch of land. So they've started in Ukraine, and it looks to me as if they're going to depopulate. Well, they've almost succeeded in depopulating Ukraine. The first thing that happened was millions of people ran away and became refugees. And then with the progression of this war, so many of them have died. And then recently I'm hearing that more than 10,000 Israelis have already moved in and bought up the property, pennies on the dollar. So it looks as though that's a long-term plan to revitalise Khazaria.
But that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's because of the minerals and that are unexploited in the Ukraine. That's very interesting indeed.
I was asking now a moment ago about the large amounts of land owned by the Black Nobility, but you've also made the point that they are, quote unquote, an empire of trade.
Well, yes, the majority of their ownership is what we would call big corporations, all the major corporations, and their money is invested through Vanguard and BlackRock, yeah. So it's kind of hidden. Their ownership of all of this network of corporations is hidden behind fake names. Vanguard and BlackRock are simply the servants. They're the servants that do the investing for the bosses. The bosses don't have to do anything at all, really. Must be a wonderful.
And they've got their hands in every pie. I mean, just today, yeah. I mean, just today, Francis, I had a look at South Africa's largest media outlet. I decided to have a look at who their major shareholders are here in South Africa, and I guess you can guess exactly who are in the top 5.
Well, yeah, it's always the same ones. It's Vanguard,
BlackRock and Vanguard.
BlackRock.
You mentioned the Vatican earlier. Now we can't gloss over that because the Vatican is quite powerful and it's still a center of a lot of control today. What influence did the Black Nobility have over the Vatican?
Well, they set it up in the first place. It belongs to them. It was their idea to have a pope and archbishops and so forth, and they appoint them. They appoint all those people. They've always come from among their own, usually second sons. First sons took over the running of the family, second sons went into religion, because religion's a very important control mechanism.
And you mentioned the Jesuits earlier, so they were set up then as the military wing of the Vatican under the auspices of the Black Nobility.
Yeah, it was the Farnese family that first took an interest in Loyola and his idea to have a military monkhood. And he went to the Farnese. They financed him to present himself to the Pope, and that was how the Jesuits got started. And they were considered at the time to be useful because they might be able to put down the Reformation, which was causing a schism in Christianity, which we now call Protestantism versus Catholicism. But they weren't very successful at doing that. They didn't actually put it down, but they were able to infiltrate it by virtue of educational establishments worldwide. All the best universities and colleges are run by Jesuits.
Yes, I actually saw that Donald Trump went to a Jesuit-owned college or tertiary institution of some sort.
Yeah. He did, yeah. So does every single leader of the CIA.
But then, okay, so Francis, what is the end game then? What is the goal of the black nobility? Is it simply to keep themselves rich and having a good time, or do they have something bigger?
That's a good question. That really is. I don't like what I foresee that they're up to. From what I can make out of what they're doing, it looks as though they are intending to depopulate as far as possible. And I mean on a massive scale. I'm not even sure if the figures we are given for population globally are accurate. They control all forms of media and information. So we might be being told we've got 8 billion people, but we may not have that many. But there's no way of knowing, because everything we know is brought to us via their medium. So they're saying via the Club of Rome into the United Nations, we've got far too many people, we need to cut down on people. And this is being educated into all the younger generations. They all believe it. Some of them actually say things like, oh, I'm never having children, I don't want to contribute to overpopulation.
Or abortion?
Yeah, indeed. It's very sad to see the impact of that kind of education. What it's done to young people is really upsetting. But then it looks to me as if in the long run, they're going to try to depopulate down to the point where they have maybe no more than 500 million people on Earth, just like it said on the Georgia Guidestones.
Which were destroyed.
Well, I think they destroyed those Guidestones, and that was a signal to everyone of their team that this is the beginning of the end. That blowing up the evidence. Yeah. This is just my own personal theory, because I know the way they think, and I'm thinking that's the sort of thing they would do. It's a signal.
You've also made a very interesting comment about the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. Now, I bring this up because these are two names that we always hear about, and they are exceptionally powerful. But you're saying that they're not that powerful, actually.
Well, no, they're not really. It's easy to tell who is really powerful and who isn't. Those that are in the black nobility aristocracy level, they are kings, queens, princes, counts and so forth. But among the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, you're not going to see anyone any higher than a knight. Now, you know do you play chess?
Yes, a little bit.
Right. So now think about a chessboard. The kings and the queens are the ones that are playing the actual game, and the others are all defending those two pieces. So next to the king and the queen is the bishops, the religious leaders, and then next to them come the knights. Well, that's who the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are. They're the knights of the realm. And the last pieces on the outside are the castles, the land, the property that they own. And all the little minions are the pawns in the line in front. So as long as you bear in mind that game is the game that's being played, everyone is defending the kings and the queens. We're not important. None of us are important. They are. That's the way they see it. They believe that they have the divine right to rule.
The people who you cannot criticize are the ones who will censor you and suppress you. And those often are Jews. But it wouldn't necessarily be black nobility suppressing or censoring you.
Well, you wouldn't be aware of it, would you? Most people are not even aware of the black nobility. So how would they know that they're being suppressed by them? Most people don't even know that they're a slave, a debt slave. Everyone thinks they're free. I've a number of times in my lifetime, people have said to me, it's a free country. I'm a free person.
No, it's definitely not.
Right, so
You were locked down. I mean, how can anybody claim any type of freedom from the last 5 years?
precisely, that was a bad move because they've made themselves really obvious. But at the same time, they're saying, what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? We could do it again tomorrow, and there'd be nothing you could do about it. Right now, they're murdering an entire, all of Gaza Strip. They're murdering every living thing in Gaza Strip. And at the same time, they're saying to us, and what are you going to do about it? The highest court in the land has said that there's a warrant out for Netanyahu. And what are we doing about it?
Nothing.
Exactly. And this is them rubbing it in. You are powerless. You cannot defy us. We own it all.
It seems a bit dark, though, Francis. You would leave this conversation feeling rather heavy. I mean, is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
That's a good one. For me, there is a light. But that's because I believe in reincarnation. I don't have any attachment to this particular life. I wholeheartedly believe in reincarnation, and I believe I've been around thousands of times before and will be around thousands of times in the future. So for me, it's not depressing in the slightest. It's just one more stage in the universe unfolding as it should. So I don't find it heavy or dark. I find it interesting. The way that some people have forgotten who they are and have assumed that they are superior to others. And that is a soul fault. They have a fault in their soul. If they believe that they're any more important than any other life form, they have a fault in their soul. And so I feel sorry for the black nobility and their chief servants. I feel sorry for these people because they're living a lie. They're deceiving themselves every bit as much as they're deceiving everyone else. As soon as they let go of that sense of superiority and become just the same as everyone else, that hole in their soul will heal. And we will all benefit from that because the way I see things, we're all one. We're one big soul. And if a few of us are damaged like that, then we're all damaged.
Okay, so Francis, let me bring it back again to the sort of human aspect. So let's talk about the British royal family for a moment. So we see Diana's two boys, Harry and what's his name?
William.
Now, they didn't have a choice. They were born into this family.
That's right.
You know, do we just stroke everybody with the same brush, or can we see some light in some of these individuals?
I feel very sorry for those individuals because they are as much trapped into an unpleasant situation as all the rest of us are. This came across in the Netflix series, The Crown.
Yes.
It was really obvious that they had no choice. There were rules that they were obeying, and it was rules that were made thousands, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And as I was watching it, I kept thinking, oh, bugger the rules. What are you talking about? Just throw the rules out and do it differently. Why can't you do that? And I was rather hoping that at some point our royal family would wake up and smell the coffee, but not so far.
Well, was Diana part of the Black Nobility?
Well, she was a Spencer, which is a noble family. Before she married Charles, she was a Spencer, but she was so young, I don't think she knew. And that's another thing. They're chronic misogynists. They think all women are airheads. They treat all women as airheads, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Queen herself was oblivious of half what they're getting up to. Because,
but then Diana did seem to know a few things that she probably shouldn't have known, which kind of leads to the death.
she knew that they were going to kill her, or they were going to try to kill her. She felt convinced of that. I don't know if she knew anything about the extreme levels of wealth that we're talking about.
Right.
I don't think she did. But because, like I say, they are extremely misogynistic. It's a man's world.
Well, if you're part of the aristocracy, I'm here in Africa. I don't have that much power.
No, well, my grandma used to say to me, "We just let the men think that they're in charge, but they're not really."
I think that's quite true. Okay, so staying with the royal family, there was that incident with Harry trying to break away with what's her name, Meghan.
Yeah.
Do you think there was some significance there? Do you think that he wanted to try and get rid of those chains?
Yes. I think he's done very well to go as far as he has and get away from them. I think he's done well. He wanted to be normal like everybody else, I think. And I think he's achieved it to a certain extent. And he didn't want his kids growing up with that same pressure that he'd had. He wants his kids to grow up like normal kids.
So if you think about the Black Nobility now in the year 2025, the families are very much there. They will continue having kids and making sure that who their kids marry are within the fold. And they are very determined to keep that power, that grasp on power for many more centuries, I'm guessing.
Yeah. It's an addiction. It's fear as well. I think they're actually terrified of becoming poverty-stricken. Can you imagine them having to live in a council house in Birmingham? They would die of fright. They wouldn't be able to cope. So a lot of the basis of their maintaining these fondi and these divine rights to rule is fear. They're terrorised. They're scared of us, which is another reason why they want to keep culling us down, because they're too scared of us. And it's silly.
They've also, I mean, you mentioned the Jesuits, but the Black Nobility have created a lot of different secret societies, haven't they?
Well, a lot of secret societies have developed underneath them. Yeah, like the Illuminati in Bavaria and the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Opus Dei. Oh, I could go on forever. There's loads, absolutely loads. But these societies make themselves. Like Rhodes, when he was in South Africa, he had delusions of grandeur, imagined that he could set up a British Empire that spanned the world, and he thought it was a wonderful thing. But this is because of his education and his hubris and personal self-esteem. These people think that they genuinely do think that they're better than everybody else, and that is just so wrong. They don't see that that is immoral.
I don't know if this is the right question to ask, but is there a way to push back? I mean, is it possible? And if there is a way to push back, what is it?
Well, the way we are pushing back now is simply by making this information available to everyone so that everyone sees it for what it is. It's like pulling back a veil and seeing what a game is being played behind our backs. And it's no good us getting angry with them, because there's nothing we can do. Like I said to you, they're saying, what are you going to do about it? Because they're in a castle or on an island or on a super yacht somewhere. What we have to do, I think, is make them realise that they are not superior to us. In fact, they're inferior to us because they're not moral. They have no morals, none at all. And anybody that accumulates more than £1 billion or dollars is immoral. And once that way of thinking enters the human race, once the whole human race says no, to consider yourself superior and to accumulate so much wealth, you are actually an immoral and unpleasant person. You're not better than anybody else. You're worse than everybody else. And as soon as they realise that that is how people are thinking about them, shame will set in. And they don't like to be ridiculed. And they don't like to be looked down on, because that's what they have been doing to us for generations. So they know how much it hurts. So let's turn it around. They're the immorals. They're the ones we've got to expose. We don't need to have any kind of trials, or these are international crime syndicates. And we don't need trials for that. We just need to say, look, that's immoral. And it can be done on a very simple scale, like when you're at work, when I was working in the City of London, having the nerve to turn around and say to your boss, I'm not doing that because it's immoral. You don't have to say because I'm a Christian or because I'm a Muslim or a Jew or any other religion. You just say, I'm not doing that because it is immoral. And put the ball on the other foot, so that they have to face up to the fact that they're asking you to do something that is dodgy. That's how I've always dealt with them in my life.
What do you think they make of somebody like Elon Musk, who isn't part of the nobility, but he is exceptionally wealthy?
Well, he is part of the nobility.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's kind of accepted. I would say that he's got. I think the money that the seed money for his businesses has come from Black Nobility all the way through, and so he is like a front man, and he knows he is. He does as he's told. The same with Bill Gates. He had money from Black Nobility. So did Donald Trump, Zuckerberg, Bezos, Thiel. All those billionaires have all been placed in that position because they're acting as scapegoats. They are the human shields for the Black Nobility. People will get angry with them, like burning Tesla cars and all that. People will be aiming their angst at the billionaires, but it's the trillionaires that are pulling the strings, that are making those billionaires possible. All of those people I just named were all trained in mind control by Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't a black nobility. He was a black nobility agent. He worked for them. And he went around the world compromising people so that they did what was required of them. And he's just one. There were loads like that. There were loads of people that were like Jeffrey Epstein. And there still are. What we have to do is point out how immoral these people are. And knock them off their pedestal by saying, you're immoral, you're not on a pedestal, not in my eyes. And I think there's a lot of power in that attitude.
How can I find your Substack and any other work of yours?
Well, don't use Google because Google absolutely detests me, and you won't find me mentioned until about the 5th page. Use any other search engine, particularly DuckDuckGo, and just type in Francis Leader and you will find my Substack come up to the top. Everything else that I've ever done has been more or less wiped off of the internet. So all that's left is on Substack.
Francis Leader, thank you so much for joining me in the trenches.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk to you. It always is.